event. Second down and 9.
That's our intro. We'll see how long that lasts, but welcome back to the 2nd and 9 podcast, episode number 3. We're recording today on February, what's today, the 7th? 7th. Thursday night, and we're going to reflect a little bit on the Super Bowl, a couple other things that we saw happen this week, whether that's the whole Gurley situation, what's going on there, Nick Foles, where his destination is going to be next year, and to break it down the Super Bowl a little bit, and then I guess talk about Antonio Brown's shenanigans. But Tony, you got anything you want to start off with?
I want to start with congratulating you. I mean, you were dead on. First week we were terrible, and this past week we were a little bit better. You hit Julian Edelman. Sonny Michel had a pretty decent game for me.
And I will say, my game pick, like you took the Pats by 3 last week. I took them by 7.
Elite.
Dutchman took them by 11. It was a 10-point game, but if Zerline would have hit that field goal at the end, I know a lot of people would have been pissed in their box, their pools, but I would have hit it on the nose. But I mean, the game was not what anybody expected. Yeah, it was, I guess, a huge surprise, obviously, from like the defensive standpoint.
Disappointment.
But I wouldn't. Yeah, I mean, it was definitely a disappointment. We all want to see high-scoring games in the Super Bowl. Yeah, Trey Wingle, he went off a little bit the other day, which was kind of funny. But let's dive into the game a little bit. So it started off super slow, which is usually the case in Super Bowls, where, like in the first quarter. A lot of people say that it's like when you do your boxes and you get 0-0 or 3-0. Those actually aren't bad scores to have. Obviously, that fell into this category of Super Bowl. But at the end of the day, they usually pick up third and fourth quarter, especially these Patriot games, because surprisingly enough, this was the biggest differential of victory of any of Tom Brady's Super Bowls that he's won, which is crazy. Yeah, and they usually really ramp it up in the fourth quarter and start putting up points. They get into a rhythm. The only rhythm that they really had the whole game was Julian Edelman. Yeah, exactly. I had made a call. That was, I guess, my good call from last week, where I think I had him for 9 and 125 and a touchdown. He didn't score a touchdown, but
close to those numbers.
Yeah, he was obviously the driving force of the game. He won MVP, which I guess could be a little bit debatable, but he was really the only reliable thing. Yeah.
They ran the
reliable
ball
player
well.
The whole game.
They ran the ball pretty well too. Sonny Michel had a good game, and even Rex Burkhead ran the ball.
Well, I think the argument was a lot more like on the defensive side, because I saw a tweet from Calais Campbell, and he had I forget who he had he pointed out, but he basically said like it was a masterpiece of a performance defensively, and the defenders should have got a little more love.
Though? I mean, how do you really break that down?
Yeah, well, he pointed out Hightower stats, and he did have a really good game statistically. Yeah. But yeah, I think it's tough to give it to one of those defensive players if they don't have a defensive touchdown or something like that in one of these games.
Huge game-changing play, maybe. Pick 6. Yeah, I agree with that.
But in terms of the way that the game went, the strategy on each team, how would you break it down on how this game was won and not won? Obviously, the Gronk catch was pretty big. That pretty much swung the game. But from my viewpoint, it was just Jared Goff being a little anemic, and just not necessarily all him, but I don't think the coaching staff necessarily put him in an amazing position to win the game, because guys weren't really getting open. The defensive play by McCourty, knocking it down in the end zone from Cooks, was a big play. The Patriots, they came there, and
it's a much more exciting game.
Yeah. Yeah. Of course.
That would have been a much better game if he made that play.
Yeah, it was.
They went right back to it on the next play, and they threw a pick too. It was a really.
Yeah, I mean, he threw a bad pick in that game. You could see that there were nerves. There's always, I think, nerves for a younger player when they get deeper into a game and they haven't had success yet during the game. In that game, it was just
they wanted to
drive after drive. They weren't really getting any momentum going. And then the whole Gurley situation.
They couldn't run the ball.
Yeah.
Gurley had 10 carries for 35 yards, and I think C.J. Anderson had 7 for 22 or something like that.
Yeah.
They didn't run the ball at all.
Yeah, you need to obviously establish more of a run game, but the Gurley situation is interesting because we don't. There's rumors going around where there's maybe I don't know if it's miscommunication, but there's just something shady going on with. I think the relationship between Gurley and McVay, because like you just said,
Health-wise,
he looked pretty good when he got the ball. Obviously, he didn't his yards per carry as overall game. He didn't have a great game statistically, but the way that he was able to hit the hole, there was that one. I think it was a 15 or 20 yard run that he had. I mean, he bursted through a hole and he looked like his normal self. So I can't really put it on like.
It was a weird situation.
I couldn't really put it on the injury. Yeah, it just seemed like that there's something going on in the background, like in the locker room with him and the coach.
Do you think at the end of the day, though, giving him those 7 extra carries that C.J. Anderson had, would that have been the difference maker? I don't think it would have been the be all end all.
Yeah, you can say that, but I don't know. Gurley's one of those guys like Saquon Barkley that he could Well, not only that he gets rolling, he's got the power to break a tackle and the speed to take it to the house on any play. And
he's way better a player than C.J. Anderson. There's no doubt about it.
Oh yeah, of course. I mean, C.J. Anderson looks like before he signed with them, he's been eating a lot of Oreos and stuff. So I wouldn't necessarily say that he's even close to the level of Gurley, even if Gurley is 75%.
Top 10 player in the league, all any position. I mean, he's
easily, but even injured, he's a much better player than C.J. Anderson. There's no threat to take any run to the house with C.J. Anderson. C.J. Anderson is going to get like his 4 yards. He'll break a tackle or he'll fall forward, and he can be effective. But I think really to beat the Patriots in that game, you needed a healthy Gurley. I was talking about that last time in the podcast, and they didn't utilize him. So I think it's still up in the air. We'll probably eventually hear like something that comes out about the situation, and it'll explain it a little bit better. But the way that it played out, it just didn't make sense, and they weren't going to win that game without an effective Gurley, or at least feeding him enough where there's going to be a threat to the defense that they have to respect the run, and then maybe something would open up downfield during the game.
They could not run it at all.
No, they couldn't.
I thought the field position, contributed a little bit too to the low scoring game. I looked it up. Pats started on their own 12, 19, 17, on the 2, on the 8, on the 4. The Rams had 3 drives that were inside their own 10 at the 6, the 2, and the 7. The Rams also had 5 3-and-outs. 5 3-and-outs, and 3 more drives of 5 plays. So they really got nothing done on offense. They were just off the field immediately.
Yeah, at some point you got to adjust during the game, and McVay even said after the game during the press conference that he got outcoached, which, I mean, there's no there's nothing to be ashamed about getting outcoached by Bill Belichick, but to that level, to only put 3 points in your first Super Bowl, you don't know if you're ever going to get back to the Super Bowl. It's that must be heartbreaking for them. And they were even talking about not even only on the offense, but at the end of the game, you saw like that Rex Burkhead run that kind of put the game away at the end. That they were talking about it on the radio. That it was on the Michael Kay show. They were talking about how Sue was just so motivated and playing so hard during the game that at the end of the game,
his face. You saw that close up on his face.
Yeah. No, he looked extremely.
When they were like the 2, I think. Like I was thinking about maybe a safety, and the boxes just ended up so like everyone was just talking about the boxes. It was just such a weird situation. But there were a lot of people looking at safety there, and he looked like he was about to get it. He was ready to play.
Well, but what they were talking about though was that he was just not staying to his assignments. He was just trying to do too much and make too many plays, and maybe not go into the gap that he was supposed to.
Doing someone else's job.
And that's how that hole opened up for Burkhead, because there was I think he was untouched when he got to that. Eventually, like when he hit the hole and went through the hole. So again,
terrible game.
As much as it sucks to say and to see each time, the Patriots find a way to get it done, even if they don't play well. They played well on the defensive side, but offensively, it was
stagnant.
Yeah, it was stagnant to say the least. But to see Brady not be able to move the ball, because I thought I still think that the Rams defense really isn't that good. They've been so hit and miss.
They're not that good.
Yeah, they have. They've got some top heavy. They're top heavy in terms of talent, like we've talked about in the past with some like substitute teachers in the back, but their secondary hasn't necessarily been great. And during the season, they gave up the most yards per carry to any team in the NFL.
Yeah, we were talking about their small linebackers with the Cowboys, even though Cowboys didn't run the ball very well on them at all, but they do have smaller linebackers.
But even with C.J. Anderson, and you still got to take advantage of that. But I think the Patriots just they have the experience. They've done it 5 times prior and won it. I think the experience played a huge factor in the game, and the pressure I think got to the Rams because Brady in the big moments, like I said, the Gronk catch, he was the one that really put it away, and the Gronk didn't really do that much during the game.
Yeah,
and,
it was mostly Edelman, yeah. And
but
Edelman
that was a
open
dime.
too.
That was a dime.
But Edelman was open too. It wasn't like Brady was making great throws. Edelman was really open on a lot of those catches.
Yeah.
He did really nice. He deserved it.
Well, that's what I was saying last week with him. That's why he was my pick because
The
Roby
steroids,
Coleman.
because he does steroids.
Yeah, well that too, but the Roby Coleman wasn't going to stay with him, and if they wanted to put Marcus Peters on him, he wasn't going to stay with him either. I thought he was going to have obviously predicting someone to have 125 yards in a game, 9 catches in the Super Bowl. That's I think that's pretty telling because he is a really good player.
Yeah.
But they had no answer for him the whole game. But even so, you'd think that with him being uncoverable during the game, that they would have moved the ball a little bit better because they have the tools to do it.
They didn't really need to though. They just kind of played their game. They possessed the ball and they ran the ball and they shut down. They made Goff beat them because they shut down the run completely. Goff was gonna have to beat them, make a play, but Goff could not make a play at all.
No, he couldn't. Because even after the touchdown they scored on the drive that Gronk made that big catch. I mean, the Rams get the ball back and they're down by 7. They can still, like.
Even when they were down 10, they had a chance. They just got to go down and score.
Yeah.
Make it a game.
Yeah, it's it wasn't the greatest game obviously to watch, but I think just from a legacy standpoint, you got to give props and respect to the Patriots and Tom Brady, Belichick. Yeah, it's I think I used the word sickening like 2 or 3 times last week just talking about them, but right. I mean to be able to do it at this level in all different types of scenarios, whether you're in a shootout, whether you're in a game like that, it's impressive, and you gotta kind of tip your cap when you see something like that. But what do you think about the Gurley situation going into the offseason? Do you, I think we saw like on the Colin Cowherd show they were saying that there's something going on in the background. McVay mishandled it. Is Gurley are they gonna try and trade Gurley? And he's on a big contract now.
I like the Colin Cowherd's point too that they gave McVay a pass on it. No one's really criticized him at all.
Yeah.
He compared it to Belichick's benching Malcolm Butler, and they gave him a lot of shit for that.
I think part of it could be due to the HIPAA laws with them not being able to disclose the injury if there is a serious injury that he's dealing with.
Isn't it against the NFL rules not to disclose the injury?
Well, they have to. They're supposed to, yeah, but there's a law where if the player doesn't consent to it, if it's not necessarily a football related injury, he may not have to. But it was weird though because he still did play in the game, so I can't really lean on.
He didn't look. I mean, he didn't run. He didn't have good yards per carry, but he didn't look like he was. not able to play.
I agree.
He didn't look hobbled. Didn't look.
He looked fine, and
I don't think it's gonna be an issue next year. I think he's gonna just pick up where he left off. I think he's gonna be a top fantasy pick. I think he's gonna be a beast.
You never know. Some of these guys, they have big egos. His situation's a little bit different because he's got the long-term deal now. But we've seen situations with Le'Veon Bell. I mean, we got the Antonio Brown situation now. I mean, apparently he knocked down and pushed down his. He's calling now. Oh, he's But to go back to Antonio Brown, apparently he just he was caught pushing down his baby mama or something like that. And
I don't know.
I mean,
there's not enough information really.
These guys are big drama. Some of these especially the diva wide receivers, but the superstar players, the same in the NBA, the egos are big, and it wouldn't surprise me if there was something there where he's
mad. Just gonna be mad at McVay, you think?
Yeah, I don't know if I want to say mad at McVay, but I mean, would you be if you felt like you were healthy and the doctors cleared you to be healthy and you're playing the game?
If you're a competitor, you want to play.
I'm sure that Gurley considers himself the best running back in the game.
He is the best running back in the game.
So I mean, to get to a Super Bowl, like we always say, you never know how many times you're gonna get there. When you get there, you want to lay it all out on the line. But for him to not be able to play that much in the game, which is obviously a coach's decision, if he was out there playing, he was fine. I don't know if it was maybe something more so along the lines of just his fitness levels. I don't know if
because he hadn't been playing.
Yeah, but
he looked fit against the Cowboys. He ran all over us.
Yeah, and he had 2 weeks to heal up and get it more fit for the Super Bowl. So That's a weird situation. That's a situation to monitor going into the offseason and going into next year.
It's definitely something we don't know, though, for sure. I mean, there's something weird there.
Yeah. Yeah, but let's move on. We're going to try and go a little bit quicker this time instead of going for an hour and a half like last week. In terms of like
we touched on Super Bowl MVP already, so we don't really got to get into that.
Yeah, so
I think he deserved it.
Yeah, one thing though I wanted to talk about a little bit, which was I was saying this after the game. I know obviously you're an Eli Manning hater. You don't like him. Like you say that he's trash. He's not a Hall of Famer.
I give him credit on so many levels. I only take it so far. I mean, I'll tell you, he was a top 12 to 15 quarterback. I think that's being generous with Eli. I think that's the whole time he played, he was a 12 to 15 quarterback. I just don't think that means you're a Hall of Famer. But go ahead, continue. Go ahead.
Well, my point was, and what I was saying after the game to people was, Brady. I mean, Brady's all they do is just reiterate that he's the GOAT after that game, and at the end of the day, they put up 13 points in that game. The defense played unbelievably. But if Eli won a game like that, he would just be getting ripped, and that he's lucky, and the defense did it all, and he doesn't deserve it, and this and that. So that was my comment on just like backing up Eli's story, because it seems like they could do the same things in those games, and Brady's the one that's going to get the respect. Obviously, I'm not comparing them because Brady is the GOAT, and Eli Manning's not on that level. But when it comes to winning the Super Bowls, there's that discrepancy in how they're evaluated, because Eli Manning also did it with a couple scenarios where he won the game, like at the end of the game,
he didn't.
where he went on a game-winning drive.
But I think, and it's funny you say that, because I think it's the exact same scenario with like Tony Romo. When Tony Romo throws a late game interception, he choked. But if Russell Wilson throws an interception on the 1 yard line in the Super Bowl, that's not considered choking. That's just it just happened. It's just he gets a pass on it. So, and it's all based off of a drop snap early in his career, and that kind of paints the picture. But I think that idea of Eli not putting up points in the Super Bowl, he never did it. He never put up huge points in the Super Bowl. Brady's done put up huge numbers and big points in the Super Bowl. And again, we're not comparing Eli. We shouldn't compare Eli and Brady, because Brady's clearly a lot better. And even like I was giving you some of these names, I'm not comparing all these guys to Eli either. I think Eli's a lot better player than a lot of these guys I have on my list of other things we're going to talk about. But at the same time, I think I get your point. It's a valid point. I can respect the point. He got it done, and that's just how people are. Everyone's going to have their biases, and they're going to look at it a certain type of way.
And biases like how you just brought up Romo. But what's funny is that
I'm just bringing up a parallel in the bias in people's bias, and I agree with you. I'm agreeing with you in a sense. There is a bias against Eli in that regard, especially when you're comparing it to Brady in this scenario. Brady's won other Super Bowls that were very low scoring too. If you look up exactly the margins of victories of his Super Bowl, but his early ones they put up 17 points ish too in the early Super Bowls too, I believe.
I don't think that was the case in the one with the Rams, like the first one that he won against that greatest show on turf team. But I just find it funny that you bring up Romo in the situation, and the comparison really is there. Is that Eli is getting people are saying that he got lucky, even though he did come up clutch. But the scenarios that you brought up were that Romo choked.
But I don't. But I don't think that Eli got lucky either. I'm not saying he got lucky. I mean, the helmet catch was a little lucky. You gotta kind of give that to him. But I mean, wasn't the Julian Edelman catch against the Falcons, wasn't that extremely lucky? And they don't win that game, even though it was a furious comeback. And again, it was a higher scoring game, and Brady did more in that game. But without that catch, they don't win the game either.
Yeah, I know. But I hate those arguments about players that they make a really nice catch and it was lucky.
I mean, but David Tyree's a number 5 receiver, and he caught the ball back.
Yeah, but it's
double coverage. I mean,
he's
Eli
also a professional wide receiver.
No, I understand it, but Eli also escaped pressure in a way he generally doesn't do.
All right, but
he did. No, he didn't.
But you got to lean more on the side of that he made a big play in a big game versus like, oh, he never does that. He got lucky.
I mean, but you watch the play. You can watch it. He heaved the ball up. It was just a prayer. I mean,
but he was also open. He was in front of Rodney Harrison.
There was 2 guys on him. There was a guy in front and back. Want to pull up the play?
Yeah. No, you could pull up the play. I'm fine with that. But the guy in front of him wasn't like close enough. He threw it high to him, and the only guy that had a play at it was Rodney Harrison. I mean, you can say it. I've said it before about Roethlisberger and one of his Super Bowls that he has. The Santonio Holmes catch was ridiculous,
Yeah, that was-
and you could say that
Well, I
Big
mean-
Ben got lucky, but like
Well-
it was an unbelievable catch.
No, but that was a beautiful throw to the sideline. We're in a place where only Santonio Holmes can go catch it, and Santonio Holmes went out of bounds and caught it. That's a great throw.
But what's funny is that if Brett Favre made that play, the helmet catch by Tyree, if Brett Favre made that throw, he escaped and he threw it up like that, everyone would be like, "Oh man, Brett Favre, he's such a gunslinger.
I
He
think the
he made a
eyeball
huge
test
play."
matters, though. Look at Eli's body
did-
language
yeah,
as he's
but-
trying to escape the pressure.
That's not a valid argument,
Yes, it
though.
is.
No,
Look
it's
at
not.
it. You gotta watch it. Look at it. Look at him. Look at him. Look at his desperation. Look at this. He looks desperate. Look at this heave.
Look at that throw.
Look at the duck. Oh, you're right. It was just one guy.
Yeah, it was one guy.
One guy. But he even did a great job playing it.
He was also in front of him too. You can't say, "Oh man, you Cowboy fans are just too biased against him. You don't want to give him credit.
I'm not
It'll kill
biased
you.
against him.
It'll
He's-
kill you to do it."
Being a top 10, 12 quarterback is being a very good quarterback in the NFL. He's just not in the Hall of Fame. And if his name was Eli Wilson or Eli Rogers or Eli whatever,
When he's walking around with that gold jacket, what are you gonna say then?
I'm not debating whether or not he's going to get it. He may very well get it. I think he probably will. I would lean towards he probably will get in, but I don't think he deserves to get in. I think there's at least 6 or 7 guys ahead of him from his generation that are better players. I think most of them won Super Bowls. They all did. Yeah, on my list here, they all did one. Peyton Manning, Drew Brees, Brady, Rodgers, Favre, Kurt Warner, Ben Roethlisberger. Those are guys I'd put in ahead of him. I also think Rivers is better. I think Donovan McNabb is better. I know you probably think that's crazy, but I think Donovan McNabb's a better player. He didn't win, never won a Super Bowl, but I think he's a better player. I think Romo's a better player.
I always bring up the argument of like being clutch and playing big in big moments, and McNabb, he's playing in big games, puking on the field.
Yeah, no,
that's a detriment to his legacy.
Absolutely, it is.
Whether he puked or not, he choked in those big games.
No, he did.
To get to 4 NFC Championship games,
and never made it. Yeah.
Yeah.
They also
he made it the one time, and then
never.
he
They always
choked
had a good.
against Patriots.
They always had good defense, but McNabb never had weapons. I mean, he had James Trash and Todd Stinkston.
Yeah, I remember that from Madden back in the day.
They were terrible
Yeah,
receivers.
I mean Brian Westbrook was a hell of a
excellent,
player.
Excellent, and their defense was always good.
Yeah.
Their defense was always good. I mean, look, it's arguable, and like I said, I think Eli probably ultimately gets in, but I don't think if his name's not Manning and if Daddy's not Archie and brother isn't Peyton,
my God.
I think a lot more people it would be a lot more questionable whether or not he was going to get in. Exactly the same career, and I think that's.
At the end of the day, Eli Manning is going to be wearing a gold jacket, and Tony Romo is going to be wearing a jacket with a CBS crest on it.
Yeah, well,
That's about it.
He's the GOAT, though. And you know what?
What'd you just say? He's the GOAT?
He's the GOAT. Look at him. You see, he freaking guesses.
Oh my God, you're so
He's,
whack.
watch Romo go into the Hall of Fame as a head coach. Watch.
He's going to be the next Dallas coach?
I don't know if he's gonna be a Dallas coach, but he's gonna be a hell of a coach. I think he could be a great defensive coordinator right now. More than even offensive coordinator. I think he'd be a great defensive coordinator.
I mean, it's amazing how delusional Cowboy fans are that you're talking about Romo as a Hall of Fame coach, and he's like in the booth and he's never coached in his life.
No, he'll coach. He would
You
be
guys-
great.
you guys
he's
are,
a savant.
like, unreal.
He's a savant. You know,
A savant.
I think you want to talk about biases? I'm way more biased as a Romo fan than I am as a Cowboy fan. 100%. I think the Cowboys failed Tony Romo more than Romo failed the Cowboys. That's how I believe that. It's unfortunate.
Notice he's wearing like a Cowboys military jacket. He's got he's got a Zeke shirt on underneath. He's got like Cowboys women's underwear on under his pants too. He's wearing a thong, yeah. Oh man, that's funny.
I mean, I can even show you Eli's numbers. Eli's numbers are more comparable to Blake Bortles than they are to Drew Brees.
No, actually seeing those are funny, but I mean, you talk about the eye test. I know I've said it on
Blake
one of the
Bortles
last
is trash. Believe me, I know Eli's way better than Blake Bortles. I'm not even making that distinction.
But with Eli,
numbers lie.
I say like he plays ugly sometimes. It just doesn't look pretty. But
Yeah,
I mean,
understand
at the end of the day, it comes down to effectiveness.
Eli's a really good quarterback.
I think that his.
You say I'm so biased. Eli's a really good quarterback. I'm not sitting here saying Eli's trash. Eli's trash. That's what Cowboys fans say. Eli's trash.
Yeah.
Eli's a really good quarterback. He's just not a Hall of Fame quarterback, in my opinion.
Yeah. Well, like I've said to you, that I'm not biased on that debate. I think that it's debatable either way. You can make an argument for him
And I think he will
being
get
in or out.
He will
I think,
probably
especially if he plays into his 40s, he's going to continue to compile stats. I think he's going to get in. I think the 2 Super Bowls was enough. But
He looks done.
looking at the numbers, like it's interesting to see the numbers that you put down there. Where Eli, he's averaging about 3,700 yards a season passing. You've got Bortles is averaging 3,500 or so. Dak 3,600. So, I mean, those aren't necessarily the best quarterbacks I would think I would want Eli to be compared to. A completion percentage is similar to Bortles too. But at the end of the day, I think Eli's numbers are a little skewed from just like the really bad seasons that he's had. And he hasn't had necessarily a monster season before because I don't think he's that type of player.
Going
he's
with the
not.
Flying Dutchman's perspective on this, as a baseball player, what does it take to get into the Hall of Fame as a baseball player? Don't you have to have 8 to 10 Hall of Fame, like 100 RBIs? And
No, actually, baseball is different. Baseball, there's a lot of guys that get in that are compilers, that they're good players their whole career, and they play for a long time, and then they have those stats
I
like
thought you had
3,000
I thought
hits.
it was required to have like 8 to 10 really good years. Like
Not necessarily. No, I mean if you have 3,000 hits in your career, you're not necessarily a lock to get in the Hall of Fame, but
I mean, if
like
you have
that,
two
that's
Super
one of
Bowls,
the that's one of
you're
the
almost a
big
lock, too.
statistics.
If you have 2 Super Bowls, you're almost a lock. There's only one guy who has 2 Super Bowls that's not in. His name is Jim Plunkett.
Yeah.
It's the only guy who has 2 Super Bowls not in.
Yeah, well, but there's other guys that you've made the comparisons to of like Brad Johnson and Trent Dilfer.
No,
which
Eli's
is,
better than them. I'm not even look.
why are they written down in your paper?
Because my point is that if you're going to say Eli's a Hall of Famer because he's won Super Bowls, I'm going to say, well, that's not a valid argument because Trent Dilfer, Jeff Hostetler, Brad Johnson, Joe Flacco, Mark Rypien, Jim McMahon, and Nick Foles and Jim Plunkett have won Super Bowls, and Jim Plunkett won too. I mean, it's a combination. Eli's probably better than every single guy I just named, including Joe Flacco. Joe Flacco was probably the best one on that list other than him. Maybe even Nick Foles. Who knows? That's kind of crazy to say. Speaking of Nick Foles, let's transition easily into that. Where do you think Nick Foles is going to go?
Yeah, that's a good question. It's funny what they've been doing is because it seems like the Eagles are trying to block like the Redskins from getting him, or even the Giants too. I have a feeling he might go to Jacksonville.
Yeah, that's what I have.
Jacksonville's got to be desperate to get another quarterback. I think the Blake Bortles experiment has to end for them to go from AFC Championship and how good their defense was
Bortles
to
is
how
great.
bad they were last year.
His contract's pretty big. The guys I have that are possibilities would be who needs a quarterback? The Jags would need a quarterback. The Redskins are going to need a quarterback. The Broncos are going to need a quarterback. The only other teams I could see doing it, maybe the Dolphins. I could see him sticking with the Eagles. And even the Cowboys, I could see.
I think honestly the Eagles should re-sign him. I think they should
With
franchise
Wentz-
tag him
Wentz,
and
yeah.
just
No, I think they had
you never know what's gonna happen.
They had a $20 million option. They already picked it up. They're picking it up and they're going to try to trade him.
Yeah. That's what they're. But that's
they
what I
may
mean.
even
Like
trade him.
that's how they're gonna try and block a team like the Redskins or the Giants from getting him.
I think the Eagles are afraid of the Redskins getting him. I think they just want compensation for it because
there's that too.
They
yeah.
already traded McNabb to the Redskins. Remember back in the day, they already gave them one quarterback. Maybe they'll do it again. They're going to need a quarterback this year.
Yeah, no, I think some of those other teams on your list, I would X them out. The
Bengals, I don't think so, no.
Bengals, no.
I don't
Broncos, I don't think they would go down the route of signing a journeyman guy like after getting Case Keenum.
That's true.
They're not going to make
I
that
was
mistake.
just going, who doesn't have a quarterback? I just made a list of who doesn't have. I think the Jags probably most likely.
That's interesting that you have the Cowboys on there.
Yeah,
Explain yourself.
I mean, get rid of Dak, sign Foles.
For Foles?
For Foles, and let's go. I just thought you'd think that was interesting. That's why I honestly put it there.
Well, no, I thought it looked like a joke because I'm like, there's no way that you would do that because I feel like you've been a proponent of Foles not necessarily being as good
No, he's
leaving
not.
the Eagles.
He's not.
Because I mean, we've seen that experiment before, but he did go to the Rams where it was a Jeff Fisher coach team, and Jeff Fisher just you saw the way what's his name from the Rams looked. Jared Goff, like while he was there, he was literally I think 0-7 his rookie year when Jeff Fisher was still there, and then all of a sudden he looks like a legit quarterback with McVay.
The guy literally calls the audibles. They go up, rush up to the line of scrimmage, and until 15 seconds, he's on the clock, telling them what to do, telling them what to change play to. And
yeah, I mean, I don't think that Goff is necessary. I don't think Goff is anything special. He has some arm talent, but yeah, I think in that case you really gotta almost hold his hand.
Who would you take?
during the
Who would you take
during the games?
out of the three? Goff, Wentz, or Dak? Who would you take?
Goff, Wentz, or Dak? I would probably take.
Talent-wise, only it's Wentz, I think.
Yeah.
But with the injury history, I think it might be Dak. It's crazy to say, but I think it might be Dak.
No, I wouldn't take Dak over. I would take Wentz. I would take
Even
the
with
chance.
the injuries, though?
Yeah. I
Wouldn't
think
help that he's a better player.
I also think that he hasn't had that much. He hasn't had luck with it. He didn't have luck with the injury last year. The year before, he was just a young kid being reckless and taking that huge hit. If you remember when he tore his ACL, he got hit in his knee. He got popped hard. He's not built like Dak, where he can try and do that. Where Dak's got rhinoceros like legs, and he's not gonna get injured to that degree on that type of play. But I think he'll learn from his lessons or learn from his mistakes that he's done with his injuries in the past. And I would definitely take Wentz. I think Wentz he's definitely the guy to go with between those three. Dak, I don't think is a franchise quarterback. That's just me. I don't think he misses too many throws downfield.
He's a winner.
He's too
inaccurate. Dak's a winner, and he does have accuracy problems, but he does hit some good throws too. I mean, you wouldn't. I don't think you'd classify Eli as a bad accuracy guy, but Eli's complete career completion percentage is 60, and Dak's is 66. I mean, he's hitting higher percentage of his passes, and some people say it's Dink and Dak offense, which is fine. I can respect
I like
that too.
I haven't heard that yet.
I've heard some people the Dink and Dak offense.
That's exactly what it is.
Maybe that's what it. Maybe it has to do with that. But maybe we'd have to. I didn't check it out, but I didn't check the averages. I wonder how that averages compared. Eli and Dak's averages look, but which would support or not the Dink and Dak offense. But regardless, I mean, I don't think Dak's a great quarterback. I think Dak is a solid quarterback. I think he's a winner, but I think if you're going to pay him $25-30 million, I think your team's going to have trouble putting together a winner. I think he's going to be paid in the 15 to 17, 20 million maybe tops range.
Yeah.
If you pay him a little bit too much money, I think you're going to struggle to put a defense and an offense around him that's going to be able to make him successful.
Yeah, I completely agree. That's an interesting topic too, because I never really thought about that situation. Because the quarterbacks are always going to get paid.
They get paid ridiculous. I mean, what did the guy from the Jets get? McCown. It was like 10 million, 12, 15 million.
Yeah, as a backup.
Just ridiculous, and he's a backup, and he's terrible.
Yeah. That Dak situation. That's gonna. Do you have that feeling though that Jerry Jones is gonna want to give him that big deal? Because I feel like Jerry Jones does like him.
Yeah, I think Jerry loves him. But I don't know. What I'm hoping is they're going to use this because he's got one more year at $600,000. So I'm hoping they're going to use that year to sign him to maybe a little bit of a bigger $20 million a year deal, but use that year to kind of bring it down to like about $16 million. That way you'll have him under contract $16 million a year for the next 4 or 5 years, and you go from there. You hope you can continue to draft well and put a good team around him. But like I said, if you're going to pay him 25 or 30, and he's going to be at one of those huge Kirk Cousins type contracts. I don't think Kirk Cousins is good enough to win with that contract either. He's not that good of a quarterback. He's solid, but he's not that good of a quarterback.
Yeah, the Vikings set themselves back because they
were better off staying with the guy they had.
He's not gonna win anything, and I think as that team gets older and they're gonna have to refuel that defense. For them to win with him, they needed the defense to be a top 3 defense.
I forget where I heard this, but I heard someone saying this, and it makes a lot of sense. Those defensive players love playing with a guy like Dak Prescott or Blake Bortles when they're on the rookie contract, when they're not making anything. And
well, look at the Seahawks.
They don't mind carrying you. They don't mind playing with you. They love you. But once you get paid, and you're making a lot more than these defensive players that are carrying you, the defense plays a little different, and it comes out a little different. Well, this guy's got to carry us. That's a good example you just gave. Russell Wilson does now carry. It's a completely different team now.
Yeah,
he's the catalyzing force behind them, even though they do run the shit out of the ball.
They're an interesting team to move forward with because I thought that they were going to be in a big time rebuilding.
Yeah, a lot of people did.
Starting this year. I was really surprised how good they were.
A lot of Cowboys writers were talking about Seattle's terrible. They should trade us Earl Thomas. Well, Seattle was better than you. Seattle's a better team than the Cowboys. Ultimately.
I mean, I don't know. I don't know if I would go that far. I think. I mean, obviously, you guys beat them in that playoff game. If it would have been in Seattle, I would have taken Seattle in that game.
Won, yeah.
I think as Seattle gets more experience with those young players, because they're a pretty young team now, they'll learn how to win on the road, and I think they could be dangerous in the next few years.
Yeah.
They could because the talent's there. I mean,
Frank Clark's a beast.
And then one of the Griffin brothers, the corner. I mean, that kid's a stud.
Yeah, and then the other kid.
The other kid with the one hand,
He can play. He's gonna get there.
he'll grow into a good player too. Yeah. But let's move on to our final topic, which is going to be kind of a reflection on this past season. I asked Tony D to come up with one storyline or situation that captivated him most this past season. And if you need a few minutes to marinate on it, I'll give mine first.
Okay, go ahead. You go.
To me, the biggest storyline, and I'm a little bit biased because I had him on my team, but I just think the emergence of Patrick Mahomes this year. That kid is just unbelievable. The arm from anything from the arm talent to just the poise in big games. You never saw that team get shaken. You never saw him get shaken in any games. The games that they lost were all 3 points or less, which is an amazing accomplishment when you think about it, especially with how good of a season they had. And to lose to the Patriots in the playoffs is nothing to hang your head about. I just think that the way that he performed this past season and putting up 50 touchdowns, I can see him doing it again next year. And I know that those type of seasons don't get repeated the following years, but the talent's there on the team. They're going to have to figure out what they want to do from a running back standpoint, but Tyreek's there healthy, Tyreek Hill, Travis Kelce, Sammy Watkins. I mean, the team, he's got a ton of offensive talent around him. You know how I feel about Andy Reid as an offensive coach. I mean, he always comes up. He's a guy that when you're getting into your mid-season betting habits, whenever they're coming off a bye, that's a team to always take because they're always very well prepared with creative plays to run on offense. And he's a great quarterback to be able to run those plays with because he's so versatile and moving around in the pocket. I've never seen someone throw the ball on the run like he does. The way he does no-look passes, left-handed passes. I mean, the kid is really impressive.
He didn't win you a fantasy championship, but he did win.
Unfortunately, yeah.
I'll always love to look at this because it's just always interesting. Where was Pat Mahomes taken in the draft? He was taken 10th overall by the Chiefs. Who passed on him? The Bengals passed on him. The Jets passed on him. Could you imagine if the Jets would have drafted Pat Mahomes?
But at that point, though, see, I didn't watch it honestly. I didn't watch a ton of Pat Mahomes. I watched some highlights, like when he was in college. I thought the Jets, that was like the no-brainer pick, taking Adams.
No, Adams is a beast.
Adams is a good player. And he also is like another one of those ego head cases, too, what he's showing.
He's a top 5 safety right now, right? He's young.
That kid's a beast. But, yeah, you look at some of those other guys. Solomon Thomas.
The Bears traded up
to get Trubisky.
One spot with the Niners to take Trubisky. And they could have just sat down and took Mahomes.
Yeah.
Could you imagine?
And look at the Chiefs' pick. They got it from the Bills.
Wow. Jesus.
It's just funny how like those bottom feeder teams, the bottom feeder teams always make those mistakes.
Even though that kid looked pretty good, I didn't think he was gonna be as good as he looked.
I didn't think he really looked that good. I think he's impressive athletically.
He's a big kid.
He's a freak. I mean, the kid can run, flat out run, Josh Allen. But throwing wise, I actually thought that he was the weakest quarterback in that draft. I personally, going into the draft, I was saying, well, no, obviously you know how I feel about Rosen. I thought that Baker Mayfield was a wild card. He could be really good. He could be a bust. I thought that Darnold would be a bust. I thought that Josh Allen would be the biggest bust of the draft. I was even on record saying I'd rather take Lamar Jackson late, like in the first round or early second round, than take Josh Allen at that spot because I didn't really see it. I think Josh Allen is that typical situation of the NFL scouts and just I think scouting overall because it's scouting. I'm very critical of athletic scouting across any sport where they look too much into the I guess I refer to them as like the superficial characteristics, like especially in football. What guy had the best 40 time? What guy what guy had the best shuttle time? What guy had the most 225 reps? Like I think that there's a lot more to like sports when it comes to athleticism, and I go by the eyeball test a lot, but also it's the mental. Because if you can, especially at that position, it's arguably the most difficult position to play, like in sports, because there's so much going on. The game's moving so fast. You have very tight windows to throw the ball, and if you're not prepared mentally and you don't study your behind off every single day, like a guy like Peyton Manning does, a guy like Brady does, you're not going to be prepared, and you're not going to be able to adjust to the speed of the game. And that guy didn't. He doesn't really do it for me on that end. He doesn't strike me as like the guy that is 100% committed his life. Yeah. Like a frat boy kind of.
Yeah.
Like he doesn't strike me as the Peyton Manning
weird
type.
thing he had to apologize for. I forget exactly what it was. Some tweets, I think racist tweets or something like that.
Oh yeah, I heard about that.
Exactly.
Yeah, that was early on in the season. I remember when that came out. But I'll pass it back over to you. What was your big takeaway from this year?
I'm gonna stay in the AFC West, and I'm gonna go with the
Really?
Raiders.
I thought you were gonna say something about the Cowboys and how they made it to the NFC Championship game.
The Cowboys should.
I was waiting for it.
The Cowboys should have been.
Actually, I shouldn't have even brought it up. Go ahead. I don't want you to go into it.
All right, let's go into the Cowboys a little bit then. No, honestly, my biggest storyline of the season, I think, is the Raiders. Just the way they sold out. They traded Khalil Mack, one of the best defensive players in the league. They traded Amari Cooper, who had a huge impact with the Cowboys. Sorry.
No, keep going because honestly, that you brought up the Raiders earlier, like before we went live, and I didn't know that was going to be in this conversation because I'm honestly shocked right now that you brought up the Raiders as the biggest takeaway.
Well,
so go ahead, the floor is yours.
What I like about it is they just hired Mike Mayock, and they have 6 top 100 picks this year. They have the 4th pick in the draft, the 24th pick in the draft, the 27th pick in the draft, the 35th, the 66th, and the 99th. Pick. So 6 top 100 picks. They can get a lot better in a hurry, and they're in a position they can even draft a quarterback. Maybe they'll go out and get someone like Foles or Eli, and trade.
You think that they would get rid of Derek Carr?
I think they would consider it. I mean, I don't know.
See, that's one situation that I've thought of for the Giants that I would be really open. I don't know how much I would give up.
I would take David Carr over Derek Carr over Dak. A heartbeat too.
Oh, I would take him in a heartbeat now, like for the future. I would want the Giants to commit to him. I think he's got the right mindset. He's got like a smart head on his shoulders, and he's got the talent too. I think he's just been in a bad situation.
Yeah. So, but I think that's one of the most interesting, just how that all went down, and even how
people were very critical of Gruden too. Like once they traded Mack, because you could look at it a couple different ways. I think it was a good trade for both teams, especially with the Raiders not being any good.
They're not going to be good, yeah.
I mean, no one really thought the Bears were going to be this good this year, but now in hindsight, they have a hell of a defense, and the moves that they made getting Mack, he's a game changer, and they're going to be in contention next year because they could have easily won that Eagles game. They could have went on and won in the NFC Championship game and gone to the Super Bowl. I think they were a good enough team.
Trubisky's going to be their Achilles heel, though.
Yeah, but I think that the coach, he's another really good offensive mind. He comes from like Andy Reid's like coaching tree, and I think he turns a bad quarterback into a competent quarterback. And Trubisky has, I think, arm talent. He's got athletic talent where he can move. He can pick up yards on the ground. But to go back to the whole trade with Khalil Mack, I think you can look at it positively for both sides. Obviously, the Raiders are looking to rebuild. John Gruden wants to completely take over, draft the guys that he wants, and groom them as young players. And then that sets you up in a good situation in the next few years when you have them all under manageable contracts. Yeah. But I do think that you can make an argument, too, though, that getting Khalil Mack for that amount of draft picks that they got, I think for the Bears, it's somewhat worth it, too, because I think at the end of the day...
They're paying a ton of money, too.
They're paying him a ton of money, but when you look at just the whole Mack situation, as long as he's healthy, he's a surefire Hall of Fame talent.
Yeah, he's really
and at times, he can't be blocked.
Yeah.
So I think...
Those guys are hard to find.
It's definitely a trade that could work out for both teams. We'll see what happens with Oakland because... Just like with the whole Herschel Walker trade back in the day with Jimmy Johnson, the Cowboys. They loaded up, but you still have to hit on those picks.
Yeah, you're right.
And the Raiders have not done a good job of hitting on picks in the past.
That was a different regime, and this is and Mike Mayock's. I trust Mike Mayock. I really like Mike. He's one of my favorite analysts. I mean,
he's good.
See how he does when he's actually a GM.
I wish he actually did like the NFL Network games more because he was good when he was doing.
No, I mean, even on the draft, I love listening to him. He's one of my favorite guys to listen to. But I mean, I have another question for you though. With those, speaking of the Raiders draft picks. On this draft value chart, the Giants' 6th pick is worth 1,600 points. They can get the Raiders' 24th, 27th, and 66th pick for the 6th overall pick in the draft.
That's already on record that's on the table?
No, it's not on the table. No, it's not on that. This is spitballing, and it's the math. This is the value chart that would show the maths, and that's approximately more or less that'll match it up about 1,600 points. 1,600 points. And that would make the Oakland Raiders be picking 4 and 6. So they can get 2 really high-impact players in this year's draft. The Giants probably lose out on the quarterbacks this year, but the Giants probably are not going to be too good next year. So there's a good chance they can end up in the upper part of the draft next year, and that kid from Clemson is probably going to be coming out, right, next year?
No, he's a true freshman. He's got 2 more years.
Did you hear that they're saying that he might go to the XFL? Get paid by the XFL?
Actually, that wouldn't surprise me
for
if
a
he
year
did
or
that.
two?
They'd pay him big money because they would get ratings. They're already going to be competing with that other league that's gonna. I think it starts soon within the next.
I think XFL is 2020.
Month. Yeah, it's a
March,
2020.
February, I think 2020. Right after the Super Bowl, they're gonna start.
Yeah, so that's an interesting situation. I don't know if that's actually gonna happen. The kid looks so poised though for such a young kid. So I wouldn't put that out of the realm of possibility because I can see Vince McMahon throwing him a ton of money.
I mean,
to leave college, he play there for 2 years, and then he could go to the NFL after that.
And he can make some money instead of playing for free.
Yeah,
risking injury for free. At least he's getting something out of it. So, but would you pull the trigger on that? Pick up two later first-round picks and a third-round pick.
I would have to look at the rankings on who's there and who could potentially be there, but like we talked about in the last podcast, the Giants have a lot of holes on their team, and they need to fill them up, but again, I'll keep saying it. You got to hit on your picks
and
because
miss on Haskins. If Haskins is not the real deal, that'll set the Giants back for a long time. It's a really big pick.
Yeah, I don't necessarily know if I want them to take Haskins. It's a tough situation.
You gotta get like an impact defense. There's a lot of good.
I wanted to
to
get the quarterback this past season, but they decided to go with Barkley, which at the end of the day, I said it to you. I was pissed that we didn't get Rosen because he was the guy that I wanted, but I couldn't really be pissed with Barkley because I knew how much of a freak he was and that he was that good. But again,
I still think Darnold was the pick, though, man. I really do. We'll see how it ends up turning out. We'll have this conversation.
You know how I feel about that. Yeah, I don't.
But
we
will
have
this conversation at some point. Darnold. We will find out if he is the real deal. To me, he started to look pretty good towards the end of the season, and I just the way I kind of broke it down the way I kind of reasoned it out was the Jets won more games, or did they? Or it was real close than the Giants, and at one point they had more wins. They did not win more games. They had less wins than the Giants, but they were up there.
If you look at the schedule,
and I don't think they were near as good of a team.
Oh no, Darnold didn't have much. They didn't give him much on offense. He didn't really have anything to work with.
Crowell, he's got freaking.
Crowell's like the best player probably.
Robbie
Anderson's not a consistent guy.
Yeah.
Jermaine Kearse.
Their tight end's pretty good. They have a young tight end.
Herndon, Herndon's not bad, but again,
he might be a little bit of a sleeper in next year's fantasy.
Yeah, and that's I think that's. One of our next episodes or upcoming episodes is definitely going to be focused a lot on fantasy. We're going to do another podcast going forward on the draft and what we think is going to happen, but I think we're going to wrap it up here. We're already at the 47-minute mark. We wanted to go a little bit shorter.
We did a decent job of cutting it short today.
Yeah, I think it was better off coming up with only a few different topics to talk about because we would have just been rambling on. I think with the Dutchman not here, though, there's a little bit less banter because he likes it. Both of you like to gang up on me a little bit.
Oh,
so.
Stop. We don't do you play the victim so much.
I am the victim most of the time with you two. I mean, you two always are hollering about like me being biased and whatnot. So.
But you are biased.
See,
especially with the Yankees.
See, if you were on the line too, he'd be chirping in the background, talking, saying how biased I am. You're biased with the Yankees.
You are, with the Yankees especially. I mean, the Giants a little bit less.
Yeah.
I mean, you were telling me the Giants were like a 15-win team this year, right? Is that what you were saying?
Stop.
I'm sorry, you're not an Eagles fan. That's not true. I mean, you literally can talk to an Eagles fan. They'll say they're going to go 16-0, and they'll lose week 1, and then they say 15-1. They lose week 2, they're going to be 14-2. It's regardless of how good or bad the team is.
Are you just oblivious to how Cowboy fans are?
Bro, it's not Cowboy fans like that.
You used to be like that.
I mean, when I was a kid and I didn't know any better. And I thought Chad Hutchinson was the answer.
No, it was until it was when Patrick Creighton dropped that ball.
Oh, stop!
Against the Giants.
Stop it.
Yeah, that you changed.
The Cowboys were a really good team that year too. The Cowboys had a really good team that year. They beat the Giants twice in the regular season.
And they choked. Patrick Creighton was talking all that ish.
Patrick Creighton. Terry Glenn fumbled on the 2-yard line of that game. Patrick Creighton dropped that wide open pass, and all he had to do was catch it, and they would have won the game. Yeah.
The Aikman, Emmett, Irvin days are over. That's a long time ago now.
I already have on record. I can pull the videotape off of your YouTube channel that you already admitted the Giants cupboard is bare right now. So you know you're miserable, and you know you're gonna be miserable for a couple more years. So just gotta take it. You gotta take it in stride.
Well, I'll take it in stride, but I'm just pointing out the biases of the Cowboy fans and that they're just as obnoxious. They're obnoxious in a different way than the Eagle fans, but they're just as obnoxious. The Eagle fans are just crazy.
I just tell you what
Cowboy
I
fans
feel.
are more delusional.
I see, but I don't feel like I'm delusional. I'll tell you how I really feel.
Oh, no, I know that you've calmed down over the year. I told you. You got set straight by the Patrick Creighton drop. That's when it really turned. You got humbled.
You ever seen that Ralph Wiggum when Lisa, in The Simpsons, when Lisa turned him down or whatever on the,
No.
he asked to be her girlfriend, and Bart plays it back. He says you can actually pinpoint the moment when his heart rips in half. That's pretty much the moment. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, that was the moment for you.
All right. Well, then
Yeah.
I don't remember it, but I feel like it would be more traumatic. I'd probably remember it then.
It was like the moment where you have the little puppy that's misbehaving, and all of a sudden you start yelling at it, and then the tail goes between the legs, and it turns around and just walks away into the corner and says, "Bad."
You're literally an ass clown. You're literally an ass clown.
All right,
Let's wrap this.
We went like 47 minutes or so without swearing, and then like we got in a few at the end.
I threw a couple in.
Yeah, but this has been episode number 3 of the 2nd and 9 podcast. We'll be back next time, possibly to talk about the draft, maybe about fantasy. Stay tuned.